gang, and welcome back to the Movie Club Emporium. And first of all, let me say thank you to all of you who joined us last night for our Superman stream. That was a lot of fun, talking about all the Superman, including our heavy spoiler review of the newest version of Superman. And this week we're going to today we're gonna what was the phrase? We're gonna tone it down. We're gonna cool the waters and talk about a movie with a little less controversy around it. So naturally, we're talking about Ari Aster's film Eddington, which, yeah, surprisingly feels less way controversial with the online chatter than Superman does. And oh boy, is this movie divisive. So I am in a weird place with Ari Aster. I love Hereditary. I thought it was fantastic. First time a movie in a long time legitimately scared me. Um, Midsummer, however you like to say it, I think is one of the best horror movies in the last 10 years. I think uh, it is going to be end up becoming a piece of horror history. And it's just an amazing film. Um, Beau is Afraid. I remember. I think I reviewed it very well. I think it made my top 10 that year. Um, it was so weird just to like the gumption of being like, we're gonna make a 3 hour panic attack film. And so with his newest film, Eddington, I was kind of ready for that continuation. But based on the trailers, it felt like this was going to be very much kind of like a continuation of Beau is Afraid. And I will say it's not that. And I actually think that this is a better overall film than Beau is Afraid. Um, it's definitely one that could definitely be studied more, but it's one that I liked much less. And we'll get into it. So I'll try to keep it spoiler free. Um, this new film is very much kind of his take, his reaction to all the events a little over 5 years ago. And I think you know what I'm talking about. And so that's where the movie takes place. It takes place in May of 2020 in this small New Mexico town. And this beef between a small town sheriff and a town mayor. This is kind of a like really. This is like Cormac McCarthy's version of that Will Ferrell Zach Galifianakis uh, movie. Like they're like running. They're both running for mayor or governor or something. This is the Cormac McCarthy version of that. um, so, so if you really wanna see what that's like, then this. This film is going to end up being weirdly divisive, and what's so funny is watching it. The biggest criticism of it is that at the end of the day, Joaquin Phoenix is playing a very particular character on a certain side of a political aisle. Pedro Pascal, as the incumbent mayor, is playing a very particular character on the opposite side of that political aisle. But what the movie does, which I think is smart, and which is why I think it's getting kind of dragged through the mud by some people, is the movie is showing you, yes, these are these two sides of this coin, but inherently, because they're all human, they're both horrifically flawed. And you may call that centrist. God knows the internet does. But it to me it this is what makes it work. This It's the same criticism I think that was given to something like Civil War, last year, with it not necessarily it's not a movie to point the finger. It's a movie that sits there and steps back and says, "Look what kind of like, honestly, look what we've become." Instead of but not necessarily delegating blame. And I think to me that's interesting. It's the same thing with it's, but in every way things are, where we're still the internet's still fighting over which Superman was better. And it's like you're just kind of proving the point of like we're all insane as a species. We're completely insane. Um, so there's no real, there's no white hats and black hats. It's a lot of gray. And I do find that interesting. However, when you look at this movie, to me, I kept being reminded of Darren Aronofsky's Mother, where like this, he has something he needs to say, and so he uses the art of filmmaking to say it. And whereas a lot of people didn't like Mother, I love Mother, um, because of its nuance and its use of metaphor and its use of allegory. This movie does not have that. This movie takes a sledgehammer to allegory and is just upfront and in your face about it, which can be good. It can cause conversations to happen, which is necessary. However, we, and by we I mean the film. This movie doesn't do that. This movie kind of picks and chooses what it wants to um, stylize and use, whether it's the idea of this fictional town, these fictional people that are based on kind of real people, especially Joaquin Phoenix's character. If you watch the news back then, he's based on a very particular person. In the broadest of strokes, like the movie does go into this home life he has with Emma Stone, who is criminally underrated in this movie and kind of underused. Her obsession with this internet uh, gentleman who is again very thinly veiled as somebody who was big into the internet lore back then, and of course now is facing legal troubles of the same. By Austin Butler, again criminally underused. He has this mother-in-law who is constantly like printing out um, QAnon conspiracies and like leaving them around and basically being a movie mother-in-law. And what's funny is, and then you have Pedro Pascal and his wanting to move forward and do all these great things while also clearly just taking money under the table, and there's no real thought to the betterment of mankind as much as it is to lining his pocket. It's real life stuff, but it's done. Those characters are done as like veiled archetypes, but then also the movie goes in so much as it starts mentioning real world events, especially kind of like the kicking off point of this movie brings up the BLM movement and what happened with George Floyd, and so it tries to have its cake and eat it too, and that doesn't work because then you leave kind of, you're no longer riding the line between film, we're entering documentary territory, but you're clearly skewing, like you're riding the you've created this fake scenario, but you're using the real world events to kind of push it on. And I'm not saying you couldn't use something like that movement, because they did, we're in that world, but it's so weird to be kind of kid gloved with these thinly veiled characters, but not mentioning who they are clearly supposed to be. But then, really name dropping things and places that really did happen around this time. It's just a weird hodgepodge, and so it makes the movie feel much more pretentious than I think it is meant to be. Um, Also, I'm really not a huge fan of things like um like the Nathan Fielder stuff, or even Sacha Baron Cohen. Like I don't enjoy um using cringe as a form, for those particular things that used as humor. In this movie, I feel like he's trying to use that as more for horror purposes. And it really isn't a horror; it's kind of a western. Um, but like I don't necessarily enjoy that stuff. Like it's not something I seek out. And again, the performances in this movie, Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal are fantastic. Emma Stone and Austin Butler are great with what they're given. They're just not given a lot. And then it feels like, so this movie is kind of doing this build to watching this community fall apart because of the internet, which happens. And again, like I said, the thinly veiled archetypes. We know these people. Sometimes we're related to these people. I certainly know people that are some of the characters in this town, but I'm not saying it's not something that should be revisited. It is, and it's something that should be studied because it was such a bizarre time that we're still feeling the effects of. It's just we're so much of that, and then the movie kind of turns into a Quentin Tarantino film at the end. Um, it just doesn't feel focused, and it feels very much. Um, I think it would have done a better job of relaying the message had it kind of gone the way of something like Aronofsky's Mother. Now, would you be able to market that film? Clearly, they couldn't do that with Mother. If you don't remember, the Mother was sold as the biggest horror movie since It. Um, and it clearly was not that. But I feel like this being an A24 film, they could have sold it as something like that. And I feel like this is a little too much of the feeling. And this is the worst example of when somebody thinks of an A24 film, like the people who don't like A24 films, and I'm somebody who loves A24 films. Um, but this is definitely the one that they can be like, well, this is why they hate them. Um, and again, it's not a bad film. It's well made. It looks fantastic, and the acting in it is great. It's just very, for a movie being so laser focused on all these topics, it comes across at the end as very unfocused because of its lack of character development outside of trying desperately to paint both sides, both positively and negatively, but not being done quite well enough as films have done in the past. Again, I turn to a movie like Civil War, which does that flawlessly. This movie stumbles with that, and then just the idea of it Well, I'm the guy who made Hereditary Midsummer, so by the end of it, it's just got to be a bloodbath type of film with heavy gore and like just insanity. It doesn't feel like the movie kind of quite earns that. Um, so it's not one that I necessarily will go back to. Again, I think that um, overall it is to me a more accessible film, which is weird to say after everything I've just said, than like Ari Aster's Last with Beau is Afraid. I would like to see him go back to not necessarily into horror, especially to grief horror. Like I said with Bring Her Back, I love Bring Her Back, and I just kind of feel like we need to take a break, just a moment, from grief horror. Um, but I would like to see him kind of do something else. Because with Beau is Afraid and this movie, and maybe he will because he had two big horror movies. We had two very big like, and that's the thing too with Beau. I think this is a better. I say this is a better movie than Beau is Afraid, but to me Beau is Afraid is very better at working in what he wants to say subtly than this movie is. Um, it's just Beau is Afraid is so long. But again, great performances, great cinematography. It's a great looking movie. It's just that it is very, to me, unfocused and kind of wants to say a lot, but doesn't really have much. It 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 somehow is very vocal about what it wants to say while also being very timid about what it's trying to get across, and so it's something. It's definitely a polarizing movie. I don't know where I'll stand on it at the end of the year. Um, I can tell you right now, the people I watched it with did not like it. Um, which kind of also reminds me of other. um, but I do still like Ari Aster. I am curious to see where we go next. Um, again, I don't need to tell you how great Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal are at acting. Um, it's just this one didn't quite hit for me the way that other movies that have commented on current events have. So, if you're not really, if it hasn't really grabbed you yet, I don't think it's going to. So I would not necessarily rush out to see it. Um, but that are my thoughts on the movie Eddington. So let me guys know what you think. And with that, we are going to be entering August. And if you're new to the New Movie Club Emporium, August, well, that's vacation month, baby. It's the summer block party. But we're not going anywhere because this year's summer block party, the theme is stay home. Just stay home. It's too hot outside. Weird things happen. So all through August, we're going to be talking about horror movies that do their best to say, just stay put. So next week, we're going to be starting off with a horror anthology from the 90s called Campfire Tales. Because camping, nah, here in this heat, buddy. So join us for that. And then also remember to like and share all the YouTube stuff. Join us over on our Twitch channel. For the month of August, Nick and I are going to be talking about the best and worst horror remakes. So that'll be fun. And somehow less polarizing than this movie. But join us over there for that. And then join us here next week as we begin the summer block party. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.